This department is in the process of redefining how we interact with our community. Our senior command staff recently participated in extended planning sessions charting the future course for this department. It has been determined there is a definite need to develop stronger interaction between our officers and the community. As all of you know better than anyone, we have become isolated from the many people living in the neighborhoods we serve. We need to refocus our attention and sincerely listen to neighborhood residents, trying to determine what issues concern them, what causes negative impressions or fear in each neighborhood, and making an effort to diminish or eliminate their cause for concern. These are fundamental values, the basic foundation of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. We exist to serve and protect our community with impartiality. I am addressing you today to emphasize my support for the police department's efforts to adopt a more community-oriented philosophy. We are slowly moving toward a community-oriented policing strategy. There is need for much more work before we inaugurate this philosophy, but we should begin focusing our energies toward a community-oriented attitude. We need to truly listen to what citizens are saying, interpret what concerns them, and react to resolve those issues. We can be more attentive to business places at closing time, ensuring that both customers and employees feel safe as they travel to their vehicles. Officers can occasionally park their police vehicles and walk through the neighborhoods, reacquainting themselves with the people on their beats. There are a multitude of activities we can participate in to show our sincerity. I'm asking each of you to think about these issues as you watch and listen to citizens' concerns in the following program.
Well, I would say that the major problem in our community has to be crime related. There are certainly other issues that I can mention to you, but the primary concern of my neighbors, myself, our entire neighborhood association would be the crime related problems. To be specific, we have pretty much an almost out of control drug problem in our neighborhood. It's visibly active on the corners, all times of the day and night, the morning, the afternoon, the evenings. It's especially distressing and active during the times when both my children and also the other children in the neighborhood are being let off by the school buses. These people actually sit right by the school buses as soon as they get off, and they actively try to recruit these kids as they get off the buses. There's been some neighborhood action taken to try to deter some of that. We've developed neighborhood foot patrols where we've hired officers to come and patrol at specific high crime times of the day, and that's had an incredibly good success rate to it. Although it certainly isn't getting rid of the problem. The problem goes away while the foot patrol is active, and as soon as the foot patrols leave our neighborhood, the problem just returns again. Where a lot of that seems to be generating is from a lot of the rental units that seem to be in our neighborhood, but specifically the absentee landlords, the people that are not screening the people that they're renting to, the people that actually know of drug deals and drug dealers that live in their buildings that continue to rent to those particular kinds of people, and the problem just keeps returning over and over and over again. Other than the drug-related problem, there are assaults that happen in the neighborhoods and in the alleys. There are deteriorating buildings that aren't being kept up by the landlords that seem to be active areas for a lot of the crime to be taking place out of. There's graffiti that comes and goes. As often as we put graffiti, or I'm sorry, as soon as we remove graffiti from a building, it returns days later, and it sort of all continues along those lines. One of the things that the neighborhood has noticed particularly is that the crime happens around the youth in the neighborhood. And the bottom line is that there just simply isn't anything for these people to do. There's no place for them to go. There are few jobs out there for these people, and they're turning to alternative means of support. Whenever programs are initiated for the youths in the neighborhood, the crime rate seems to drop. As soon as those programs are done away with for either money problems or whatever it might happen to be, the crime rate starts rising again. So I would say that the major problems in our neighborhood are absentee landlords that are not keeping the buildings up, that, and if I can interject one thing that's positive in our neighborhood, is we are in a very centrally located part of the city, which makes it very advantageous for people to move here. The buildings themselves are incredibly beautiful and are being rehabbed very, very slowly. But people are very reluctant to move into our neighborhoods because of the crime issues that I've been speaking of, primarily drug-related, gang-related, assaults and drug sales, I guess, would be the major problems in our neighborhood.
Well, one of the problems that I think that we're having now is a group of young people that are coming in from the outside that we have never seen before, and they seem like that they just roam the streets, and it seems like this last summer, all during the day, different ages, children that should either be in school or young people that would probably be working, and they're doing nothing but just wandering around, and they're hostile children that if you reprimand them for even the slightest thing, they're all ready to fight. And that's one of the most recent bad things that have been occurring in the last year. And I feel myself, because we have this problem here on our street with this confectionery at the corner, but we have been feeling that they draw this group, but where they draw them from, or how come that they come down there, what draws them there. We feel that it's drugs, but so far it hasn't been proven. But they're there all the time, and they loiter, and they walk up and down the street. Now, like the other night, with all this snow and everything, there was a group of them walking down the street about 7:30 in the evening with snowballs. And this one lady called me, and she said, "Did you hear?" She said, "We heard glass breaking after they passed." And she said, "Were your windows broken?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, they heard the glass break, and they saw them with the snowballs when they passed their house up the street." And she said that they went into that confectionery, and she said there was about 8 of them, about their age, a group about 14, 15, 16 years old. And that's one of the most outstanding things that have been happening here lately. And this rash of shootings. And then another thing is, all of a sudden we had this accumulation of trash in the alleys that we never had all through the years that I remember living here on the street. We never had this, like old mattresses and furniture, and we feel that it's brought in by either commercial people that clean basements or whatever, because they surely don't come from the houses that live here, because there's quite a few people that have lived here for years. They're still here, and they have never done anything like that before. And there are several houses that are operated by slum landlords, and some of this comes from houses like that when they change their tenants.
Well, I tell you, it'd be kind of hard to start at any one definite point, but just for the sake of continuity, I think that perhaps we need to start with our young people. One of the problems I see is a curfew enforcement around here, or the lack thereof. Most of our crimes are committed by young adults under the age of 21, a lot of house burglaries, auto parts theft, graffiti on buildings, gang fracas, rape and that sort of thing. And the young people here don't have an alternate outlet for their energies. And I see this as being one of the problems. Either we need to supply an outlet for them, or do something to curb their activities after a certain hour, so that we can make the residents around here feel more at ease in their home and not as prisoners. A lot of the elderly people in this area are almost afraid to come out after a certain hour for fear of youngsters who would travel in groups of 5 and 6 and upward. Even with the young girls, they're almost as bad. And if you look around this area, you will see most all homes, 9 out of 10 of them have iron bars at the doors and at the windows and on the garages and places like that. And this was not so when I moved around here in 1967. But now we almost feel like it's an in-house prison for most of us around here. And that's an uneasy feeling. People start to have a great distrust of one another. You wondering if your neighbors are part of the problem, or if you're part of the problem. I just see it as a kind of a conglomerate of a lot of small things rolled into one, and it's just kind of blown out of proportion in these last few years. As you can attest by the news media, the headlines, everything is north side, north side. And this gives us a low self-esteem of ourselves and also of our neighborhoods. And this is why that the property values are low over here, because people feel like the north side is not safe. This is why businesses refuse to invest in this area, because they feel like the teen problem has not been addressed, and people just don't want to invest a lot of money over here. So consequently, people here have to go great distances to shop, to take care of their personal needs. And all this was not so years ago. In 1967, we had bakeries, drugstores, hardwares, shoe repair, you name it. Everything here for your convenience. Now we may have 1 or 2 convenience stores, and mostly liquor stores. We have enough liquor stores here so that everyone can have their own personal liquor stores. And I know that's not required, but that's how the landscape looks to me now. And it almost appears like my dream home in 1967 has almost turned into a nightmare.
In the neighborhood where I live, our biggest problems are probably noise, trash, vandalism, and absentee landlords. And I think that 3 of those, noise, trash, vandalism, are largely associated with kids. You know, there's just so many kids that have nothing to do, and you know, they spend their time running up and down the streets, you know, making noise and breaking windshields and littering. And you know, that serves to, you know, that's kind of the visual image that our neighborhood is, and it's not a good one. So I think that is a big problem. Then the other problem is the absentee landlords, which lead to derelict buildings, and you know, another visual thing that people see, you know, poorly maintained buildings and overcrowded buildings, and a lack of responsibility on the, you know, in the hands of the tenants. People don't care about where they live, and so eventually the building will go vacant or just fall apart by overuse.
Well, I think the bottom line across the city is that we just need more police officers. The number of officers, everybody knows, has been dropping year after year after year. Everybody knows the reasons. The city is in financial difficulties, and it seems as though one of the first groups to go are going to be either the firefighters or the police officers. And I just don't believe, and I believe there's a lot of people in the city that think like I do as well, that those should not be the services that are cut as quickly and as rapidly as they have been cut. We need more police officers in our neighborhood. We need police officers that, or programs, I guess I should say, that possibly, very much like the foot patrol that was initiated in our neighborhood, would actually get out of the cars and walk through the neighborhoods, get to know the people in the neighborhoods, and also officers that are primarily assigned to our neighborhood so that the neighbors get to know those officers. I guess this is probably something that used to be done years and years ago when an officer had a beat that he walked, and the neighbors got to know this officer. They knew they could depend on that officer being there. That's not the case anymore. Now, because of the budget cuts, officers are sort of locked into their cars. The neighbors don't get to know them. They have very little faith in what's going on. The response time for things that happen in our neighborhood is incredibly slow. And I know it's not because of the officers. They come roaring in here as fast as they can. They just came off of another situation somewhere 2, 3, 4 miles away, and they're getting to us as quickly as they can. There just aren't enough officers to meet the needs of the crime situation in our neighborhood. I'd like to see more officers. I'd like to see officers more personally involved with our neighborhood, and I'd like to see a quicker response, which obviously the more officers would allow these officers to be here much more rapidly and possibly catch some of these people involved in the act rather than taking reports and then doing it sort of the hard way, trying to investigate afterwards and question people and try to track these people down. I would say probably the best thing that could happen to our neighborhood would be the COPS program or the neighborhood stabilization, but the COPS program seems to be perfect for the type of neighborhood that we have, where, as I mentioned before, there are certain built-in things that the COPS program would offer us, a personal group of officers that are here constantly. They possibly would get out and be on a foot patrol type of situation. Our neighborhood is certainly in need of the program like COPS because it's just exactly what this neighborhood needs. It needs more police protection, it needs personalized police protection, and it needs the officers to be here more often than they have been able to be in the past.
Well, I believe that the police could help the neighborhood by being a little more visible as far as cruising through the neighborhood, maybe up and down the streets and through the alleys, because I think just seeing the police now and then even it deters a lot of bad activity with the youngsters when they see the police, even if they don't even stop. And that's one of the ways. But now, personally, when I ever had to contact the police department, I can't complain because I think I always was well treated. I mean, I had prompt service, and I think that the police did the best. They did a good job whenever I called. Now, a lot of people complain that they get, that they are treated uncourteously, but I don't believe that because I have never had that experience. The police have always been cooperative, and it seemed like whenever I call, they answer promptly.
I think the police could do several things to kind of help the situation over here. Number one, I know that the budget is tight, but I would like to see more beat patrolmen where you could have personal contact with the residents, get to know their names, get to know their personal problems, and they could even help you solve a lot of the problems that the police spend hours of investigation, because I know my neighbors. I know the ones who I have serious doubts about. I know the ones who I know I can count on. So if the police would have more of a personal contact, I think that a lot of this information that they spend hours investigating would be right at their fingertips if they would just talk to the residents. Secondly, I mentioned about the youth. Our young people have grave doubts and suspicion about police protection. They feel like the police is our oppressors rather than our protectors. So consequently, our teenagers know a lot of things that they won't even divulge to police because they feel like it would just ricochet and come back and cause them more problems. So they won't talk. They get involved in things that they are pretty closed-mouthed among themselves, but they won't open up and talk to the officials around here because they feel like they can't trust them with information. And I think that the police also ought to have a kind of a different attitude. I think in this day and age when our world is growing smaller and smaller, we need to have a close relationship with the community. A lot of people look upon the police as being the oppressors rather than our protectors. And the moment that we can start working closer together, we're more or less kind of friend and friend, rather than police and residents, I think we'll start to get some more results from the police department and also from the neighborhood in general. Most of these people around here are solid citizens and they don't want to cause any problems. I mean, but they have to survive. And this is why I think you have house burglars may be up. People do a lot of these things not with intention to do bodily harm, but they're trying to survive. So they steal autos, the accessory parts. They break in homes and take TVs and that sort of thing. But I think we need to try to turn this whole picture around and start to have more community meetings and just let all our feelings just air out.
I live in a neighborhood that has a COPS program, and that has been a huge help to our neighborhood. Specifically, the COPS have helped a block get rid of a drug house by educating the people on the block as to how they can report crimes and things that they see directly to the police and what they needed to do and look for in terms of getting enough information to, you know, kind of break or arrest the primary drug dealers. We've seen it work, and we want to see it continue to work. The COPS program has helped us in a lot of ways. I mean, it's helped people in the neighborhood know how they can assist the policemen. Tells them what they can do, how they can report crimes, how they can report what they see, and probably most importantly, what they can take care of themselves. You know, how they can handle an overloaded dumpster by not calling the cops, but calling the refuge department or calling the conserve officer. It's just made people aware of how the police work and how people can help the police work. It's also made the people, it's made the policemen interact with the community. Our neighborhood association is, I mean, our primary goal is to get more people to interact in the community. The more people you know and the more people you see on a day-to-day basis, the safer you are. And our cops, you know, we see them as much as we see our neighbors. We wave to them when they're driving down the street. We invite them to block meetings and neighborhood events, and they're really well attended by policemen that we know, and that's something that I think has improved the neighborhood immensely. I can't really name, well, I can name a few specific things that I have called the police, you know, called the cops, and they weren't really actually crimes in progress, but they were situations where I wanted to know if they knew about this, if they knew about, you know, these people tearing up an automobile, and they were able to actually say, yes, we do, that happened then, we have a suspect, just things like that I think are really important and probably lack in a big city. You know, it's the type of thing, it's small town police work, the type of thing you want to see. You wish you have it when you live in a small town, but if you elect to live in a big city, you kind of lose that, and I think that the COPS program has brought that back to our neighborhood. I don't really have any complaints about the police. I've lived, you know, in my area for 7 years and have probably called the police just 3 or 4 times to either report something or to, you know, find out information.
I don't know if it's actually fear, but it certainly is a constant worry. It's something that we're always on guard about. We don't live in fear, but we live on the edge. an example. My wife is particularly angry about practically having to be at home in the evenings. There's just no way she would be out there alone in the evening. There's no way we would take a walk in our neighborhood in the evenings. We just wouldn't do that. There's always this thought in the back of our mind that it's there, that something is there. It's not something that would cause us to pack up and move away. It's not that type of fear. Thank the Lord nothing has happened to us that would instill that kind of fear, but it's a constant worry. It's on my mind, it's on my wife's mind, it's on my children's mind. It's something I wish I wouldn't have to talk to my children about. I feel that they're of a certain age right now, they shouldn't have to carry a load like that, but being that we live in the neighborhood that we do and we have faith in this neighborhood, there are incredibly decent, good, hard-working people that live in our neighborhood, and for that reason we're not about to give up on this situation, but it's the type of thing that my whole family has to be aware of constantly.
Oh, well, I don't feel afraid at the present time because I have lived here a long time, and I know that there are a lot of good people in the neighborhood and have been, you know, and but here lately though I'm a little apprehensive. I'm a little more cautious than I used to be, and but I still don't think it's you know, when you know the neighborhood, you know the people, why I'm not afraid.
Sometimes I get pretty frustrated myself, but then I always pump myself up with some kind of cliches about winners never lose and winners don't quit and quitters don't lose, that sort of thing. And I remember the late Will Rogers saying, in order to like a man, you first got to get to know him. And I think that's one of our big problems in this neighborhood. People don't know one another. I hardly know my neighbor lived next door. On this block, I think I may know 5 people. In some areas, no one communicates with their next door neighbor. Everyone looks upon each other with kind of a distrust, with suspicion. And in order to solving the problem, we got to break that distrust down. And I think the police could go a long ways into doing that. Just come out openly with a smile, a hand wave, just a good word as they travel about. And maybe people will start to open up and look upon them in a different light, rather being someone that you can't trust and that sort of thing.
I do, because it really is the number one thing. I mean, your family, your home, your investments have to be your number one priority. But I don't think that I worry about it any more than whether, you know, anywhere else that I could live. I think that, you know, I have a safe block and a safe neighborhood, and you know, you can get robbed or run over by a car anywhere. So yes, I do. I am very concerned about the welfare of my family, but I don't feel like I'm overly concerned because of where I live. I live where I want to live, and I'm glad that I live there.